that it didn't seem like it was, it seemed like it was a continuation, because so many things happened before Wounded Knee, and then so many things happened after. But what happened at Wounded Knee, again, became an international happening. And that's when we realized then that we weren't alone. I think that had a lot to do with it, that we realized even though the media was limited, because it was a male-dominated, non-native press on all levels. So, just the fact that it went international, was really important, because, again, we thought, yes, the land, we have every right to make a stand. We make that decision. That's what I learned. And I wasn't that young. I was 33 years old. I was one of the old guys.
Gigi, we have Joanne Brown, who's the writer of Voices from Wounded Knee. Your call to action was a little different. Can you explain that to our audience here? How you came about coming to Wounded Knee and what you ended up finding for yourself?
Sure. I was 26 or 25, I think, and I was working on a radio show that fed college radio stations, and I was mostly working on the Vietnam War and Asian stuff, and then Wounded Knee happened, and I was trying to get information about it so I could cover it, and after a short time it became harder and harder. So my colleague and I, Barbara Lou Schaefer, decided, well, let's just go out there. So we got in my little red Volkswagen, and we drove out to Pine Ridge, and we went into the BIA, and we showed our press credentials, and they gave us press passes, and then we went into Wounded Knee, and a few days after we were there, the government ordered all the press to leave. So ABC, CBS, NBC, they all picked up they had big vans, and they would cook steaks and drink wine in them, and they all picked up and left. And so Lou and I said, well, if they're leaving, we have to stay, because we don't know what's going to happen. If there's going to be violence, we have to be here to witness it. So we ended up staying till the end of the occupation, and then we stayed a little bit longer for the negotiations between some of the chiefs and the government. And what did I get out of it? Well, it was an amazing experience. I had already participated in one or two Indian protests around the Onondaga Reservation, which was near where I went to school, and they were trying to save a little slip of land on their 6 square miles of reservation. And so we all went to talk to the governor who was taking it, and I just remember that very clearly, because everybody was, the Indian people, especially the chiefs, were dressed, in full regalia, and out came Governor Rockefeller, I think, and he was just a little small guy in a gray suit, and he looked really so less powerful than the Indian people who were there. And so that was my other experience first that got me really interested in Wounded Knee. And I learned a lot about community, and I learned a lot about standing up for something you believe, and it was a really remarkable group of people. And I have to say, I also agree, it was a lot, the leaders were men, but a lot of the people behind the whole event were women. And some of those are in the book that we wrote. Oh, you asked about the book. So then we had all these tapes of interviews and meetings and everything. And Akwesasne Notes, if you know, they used to be up in the Mohawk Reservation. They asked us to come and do a book. Or so we went up there and lived in a little wood farmhouse for about 12 months and put this book together.
Thank you so much. Hey, we also have Fran Olson, who's was with the Wounded Knee Legal Defense an offense committee, and so you came about this a little later after the struggle began. Can you tell us a little bit about what your participation is? And I know Madonna talked about you earlier, and it was so happy to see you and your posse show up here for this celebration of our matriarchs of Wounded Knee.
So tell a little bit about where you fit into this picture.
It's the first time I've ever thought about the possibility of having a posse. I'm impressed. After about the first week, the government, the USA government, had announced that they were going to break down the barricades of Wounded Knee and arrest everybody. And Ramon Robidoux, who was the only Native American lawyer in South Dakota at that time, called the National Lawyers Guild offices around the country to see if they could get some help, because he realized if they arrested a huge number of people, just the simple processing would be very time-consuming. Now, I was a very young lawyer at that time, but I knew I could process people. I could do what I could do. And so a fellow radical lawyer and I drove up from Denver, and we came with a commitment to stay for a week. We were blocked at the government blockade for a long time, but finally we made contact with Ramon Robidoux and we got through. And so, of course, the government, you can never trust the government, even if they say they're going to arrest you, they don't necessarily. And so the government backed down. During this time, they kept trying to send people or asking for people. The people who were supposed to be acting, helping, doing something, serving the government, the U.S. government at Wounded Knee, kept getting indicted because Watergate was busy going on about this time also. And so the whole country was realizing the government was crooks, but they still stood up and acted like they were supporting law and order at Wounded Knee. After a week, my colleague had to go back, and the people of Wounded Knee, who I knew best, were saying, "You're not going to leave, are you?" I said, "No, of course not." And so I stayed the rest of the 71 days. Wow. And was very pleased to do so. I divided my time somewhat between Rapid City and Wounded Knee, because we had a lot of lawyers began to offer to volunteer to help. And it's very hard to know how to actually make good use of somebody who can come in for only a week or only 2 weeks. And so there were a core of us that were it was important to sort of make plans and organize litigation and get things going and keep things going and being able to actually put lawyers to useful work. So that's a lot of how I got involved in what I was doing. One of the things that impressed me the most throughout the entire period, but it first struck me, was that the local leaders of the movement were largely women, and the national leaders of AIM were largely men. When the government came into Wounded Knee to negotiate, or actually to try to tell us the way things had to be, and that we better take down our arms, and if they ever expect anything to come out of this, you better close up. When they came into town, they kept trying to limit the participants to the AIM members, and the AIM members, to their deep credit, refused to allow the government to separate out the women, to keep the local people, in the background. Because the movement had all begun as a local movement, and the women leaders were very important. And AIM immediately knew that, respected it, and forced that recognition upon the government. They subsequently forgot it, but they remember little bits of it. So that's what's impressed me. I'd like to mention one thing about one of the early successes we had as lawyers was when the government tried to stop food from coming into Wounded Knee. They had these roadblocks, and they tried to stop food coming in. They claimed, well, you never know, there may be guns in that food. Somebody talked about some sort of Pops cereal. That must be guns or weapons. And we want them to run out of guns and weapons, so we won't let food in because we can't be sure. So we brought a lawsuit. A couple of us who interviewed a bunch of the people
figured out that, yes, that was happening. There were people in the churches in Rapid City gathering large quantities of food and wanting to send food in. So we brought a lawsuit because there's no legal basis upon which you can block food coming into a place. And that was the first time a federal judge was actually willing to say, yeah, blocking food from human beings, including, we emphasized the women and children, but that was really a bad thing to do. So we got an injunction saying, you can't block food. You've got to, and we worked it all out. They had permission to open up our trunks and look through all the food, check for any pots or anything else, look at everybody, look at us and fill out FBI reports on us, and so forth. And then at that time, the government, I shouldn't say this because I don't know it, but it happened that Dickie Wilson and his crew, they called themselves goons, didn't they? Dickie Wilson and his goons set up another roadblock. And apparently, that was the roadblock that was the real thing that made it difficult to get food and legal services into Wounded Knee. Now, some people could climb over the fields. Some of the medical people who came to volunteer did climb over the fields. Sometimes they would be let in, but sometimes they wouldn't. So under this pretense, what they had is we were subjected to the Dickie Wilson goon group, who basically at gunpoint took away the food. And as we were leaving, according to Mark Lane, who I'm sure is telling the truth, they shot at us, shot at the car. So I too have been under fire. In any event, and it's really interesting because we viewed the injunction as a success. And the fact that they took away food did have an effect upon people. We were able to get that publicized. It was able to be seen by the nation that it wasn't simply a Indians versus Indians and gosh, the government doesn't play a role. They saw that the effort to block and destroy the actions at Wounded Knee were being facilitated with the help of friendly Indians, which has been a long strategy of any colonial power.
Yeah.
And the ironic thing, which is interesting, is in that sense it was a success, but so like so many legal successes, the clients, the people of Wounded Knee, didn't get anything directly out of it. No food came in directly because of that.
Wow.
And yet it was a legal success, and I wouldn't want to underrate that.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. Madonna, I kind of know you. Last time I was here at Wounded Knee, you were on a horse, and I'm going, oh my gosh, this lady's 80 years old and she's on a horse. I want to ask you, what was the mood like there? We know you have a good sense of humor, but we know from people that knew you back in the day that you were also a taskmaster. Where was the fine line, and did you have time to use your great sense of humor?
Well, I didn't have to really worry about, using a sense of humor, because we were all Indians,
And that's what Indians do, And that's how you get through things, and things that the rougher it gets, the funnier people are, and we all know that, that's how it works. But yeah, what happened with Wounded Knee individually, I don't know, but just from what we were doing, and it was more like, well, we're here, and we'll just make the best of it. So nobody was complaining, nobody was scared, nobody was panicking. And in fact, the younger ones that I know of would go in and out. They'd sneak out, go to Rapid, and hang out for a while, and come back with the latest news, let us know and stuff. And they always have a backpack, and some of them would have instant coffee. Oh. Andrea Rabadou is right here. She was one of the medics, okay? And one time she came in and she said, Madonna, look what I found. I said, what? She said, she went like this. Here there was 2 packs of instant coffee. boy, we looked at each other and got real quiet. I mean, there was nobody in there but her and I, and a couple of people that were in the, patients that were in there, for other things, And so we got real quiet like that, and we said, come on. So we went over and we really put the water on to heat up the water, pretending like we were cleaning up or doing something, We got the hot water and we went into my room, which was a storeroom, because we were in the clinic was in the building where the trading post owners lived. So it was kind of fancy, and it had this big utility room. So it was big enough to have a, bed in there and stuff. So we went in there real quiet, shut the door, and we sat down and we drank that instant coffee. And looking around like, someone was going to come and take it away. I mean, it was precious, So those are the kind of things that I remember. I mean, I don't remember everybody being scared. Hey, we knew the firefights were going to happen. We got used to that, And so that's what we did. As soon as the flares went up, the feds lit up the ground every night. Flares would hit them at different intervals so that the whole area was lit up. So as soon as the flares started going out, we got ready and crawled out to the bunkers because we knew the firefight was going to start. So it kind of became routine.
Mm.
Survival instinct,
Mm-hmm.
Surrounded by ancestors.
Oh, wow. I just have one quick question too, is I noticed there were ribbon shirts worn by the women, but no ribbon dresses. Why was that back then?
That was a different era, A different time, How are you going to run in a fancy ribbon skirt? How are you going to charge a barricade, with the ribbon skirt, So we did the ribbon shirts.
Good. Peony Gigi, thank you. Now, you had a situation where you had to go to the bathroom and something happened and you felt really, we talked earlier about this intense fear for a moment. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, remember I was saying that I was young and naive, and I wasn't going to give him any glory, who was my ex-husband at the time, who was my husband, he's my ex now. I thought I was safe under his, being with him, and but he was a Vietnam vet, so I kind of had, a little trust, because I didn't really trust people anyway. And I woke up that morning to gunshots. And we were in a firefight. And when it was, Mother Nature wakes you up. When you wake up, Mother Nature's calling you. So I said, I poked him and I told him, I said, I need to go. I need to go. And he said, okay. But some smart person thought he had a great idea. He was going to build us a outhouse. Instead of going down to the creek. I didn't mind going down the creek, but it was a little bit unsafe for us, so I told my ex, I said, let's, I gotta go. So he had, that smart person, he had built a 6-foot hole in the ground. It never did finish what he started. and so it was just a hole. So my ex, he told me, he says, come on, I know you can go. And he said, okay, I'll watch your back. And so he told me, he said, jump in that hole. Before, he was telling me what to do before I went out. And so when I opened the door, they shot at us. God. And then I didn't really get scared, and I just said, darn it, I gotta go. And I said, so he said, go ahead, run, because he was kind of like timing the shots, because where they were going to different areas. And so we kind of got cleared a little bit, so I went and I jumped in that hole. And I did my thing. And I said, thank you, Mother Nature. And I said, I appreciate this. And I said, I got to make sure I get back safe. But he told me, he said, when you get through, he says, kind of, you know, let me know when you're through. So I did. And I, just a few inch from that hole, of course, I wasn't only standing in my piss, I was standing in my feces. You know, and I wasn't ashamed because I did that. It's just natural, you know. And so I let him know that I was ready to come out. But he was kind of like still timing the shots because they were still shooting towards us. And I just barely, they'd seen my head, the top of my head, they had my hair. And they were shooting at us. And so I guess they must have thought I was a sniper. And so I stuck my head on, they see my head, and I got back down, and just before I was getting ready to go back down, I felt the wind of the bullets. Not knowing, Madonna knows what I'm feeling, not knowing, you know, we were close to death. A lot of us felt that, but that was my first experience, not knowing what being in war, a militarized zone war. Because where my bunker was, that's the same bunker where Frank Clearwater got murdered. Our bunker was in the demilitarized zone, right there. And I didn't realize that until after I got her book. And I see that because she's got our bunker in there.
Wow.
And I didn't realize that. But thank you for that. And but that was an experience that stuck with me throughout these years. Been 50 years. I remember it to this day because that's something I'll never forget. I'll take it to my grave. But I never told anyone this story, my experience. Never. Because after I had left Wounded Knee, after we left and we went our own ways, I didn't know I had PTSD because I thought I had a good mind. I thought I had a strong mind. That's why, you know. But if you're involved in something that's very violent, if you don't have a strong mind, it will affect you. I'm telling you, because this is what happened to me, but experience is experience. Oh.
Wow, amazing story. Yeah, that's an amazing story. I want to give everyone a chance to answer this question. I want to start with Joanne first. And I know in my own life, and I think everybody here has that time in their life where they'll always remember. And does it seem that long ago, and is this something that is a part of your memory today?
Well, I wasn't sure of it, and I haven't been back here in 50 years, but I've done other activist things all my life, mostly in Chicago. But when this came up, that this was happening, and that our book was being reprinted, I got very excited, and I've been remembering many parts of the experience and many people ever since, and I know it had a big effect on me.
I want the same question to you.
As a single incident is different from sort of the broad. In terms of the broad, what stays with me strongest is the people I met, especially the people in Wounded Knee. As a single incident that played an important role in basically convincing me to return to law. I clerked for a federal judge for a year, and then I started working for a nonviolent organization. And I wasn't sure you could be a lawyer and a decent human being at the same time. I had seen just enough lawyers to be very skeptical about that. And well, sometime fairly late in the whole operation, there were teams of medical teams coming in to relieve the other medical teams, and the government, as part of its strategy of trying to wear people down, it was giving the medical teams a hard time coming in. And I remember very strongly, there was the medical team that really had to get in because the other one really had to leave. They were getting really burned out. Doctors aren't that much stronger than lawyers, and we're pretty weak. In any event, but they really had to change. And so they were seeking advice. And I remember the medical team telling me that they really trusted me and that they didn't trust most lawyers.
And I realized that it's not really that law makes people into, I want to say shits, but that's probably be blipped out, into thoughtless people, but that a lot of thoughtless people become lawyers, and that law might encourage thoughtlessness. And then that's what convinced me that one could be a lawyer and a decent human being, and that's what I've tried to be ever since.
Wow, yeah, it's just amazing. Madonna, you've been through a lot of fights. You were at Standing Rock, seen you at Line 3 in Minnesota. Your work has just been unbelievable all these years. What sticks with your mind specifically about Wounded Knee?
I think it's all of our people that came from all over the country and the unity. I mean, every one of our nations was represented. And that's,
Again, I felt that, we're not alone. It's just locally, nationally, and internationally. Because after Wounded Knee, that's what the elders told us, we've got the world's attention, we need to go further. So that it was just after Wounded Knee, it was just like, the next phase got laid out to us, and we had some strong, amazing elders that had our back. So as the years went by, all the way up to Standing Rock, that's what, when I became an elder, I saw that was the responsibility, to show up, and you don't have to say anything. You don't have to be on the mic. You just show up so those young people know you have their back. Because our ancestors showed us that. And that's our strength, is our ancestral memories.
There was a lull, we talked a couple of years ago about that. It seemed like there was a lull of young people showing up to represent, and then Standing Rock happened, and people were looking up to warrior women like yourself, and you've expressed that you're really happy to see young people now show up to these events now, and with this great history from all you, these young ones can lean on it. But can you explain a little bit about that? There was a little lull, people, where were everyone? And then people showed up. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, kind of.
Oh.
I really forgetful. Yeah. Anyway, but no, I just think, the overall picture, for me has been, there was a lull, of those years, but what the American Indian movement taught me was everybody is in the movement. Everybody is, if you're taking care of your family, if you're taking care of your children, if you're in school, if you're making it every day, that's a warrior. So it doesn't always have to be an action, It doesn't always have to be, glory, all that kind of stuff. We were on the brink of going, circling the drain, as a people. And what Wounded Knee did, Alcatraz, and many of the other events, of the day was just a spark. And from that we had flames,
Oh.
And so now we have native media. Look at what you're doing. I mean, to me, that's amazing, because we didn't have that. We had to fight for that. We had to fight for every little thing, So to me, everything's a step forward, whatever we do.
Wow, that's amazing, and we're gonna end this, and I just feel so blessed to be among these warrior women and you warriors out here. I really, really appreciate this conversation and these stories and your experience.
So I just want to say, Peeny Gigi, thank you so much to the Warrior Women Project, and thank you to all the Aimster gangsters. Oh, yeah. Thank you very much.
I don't know.
Thank you.
Here she comes. All right, one more big hand here for the Warrior Women here, please, and Marcy. Peeny Gigi.